j§6.6.
Today, as the Allies await orders to launch a ground war against Iraqi forces, we mark the 46th anniversary of one of the bloodiest ground assaults of World War II, the Battle of Iwo Jima. It was supposed to be quick and decisive due to 70 days of intense air attacks. But when the Marines landed, they found a dug-in and well-fortified Japanese army ready to fight. CNN's Pat Etheridge reports.
46 years ago began one of the bloodiest battles of all time. Just listen to those who were there.
The most brutal surprise was to see a friend of mine standing immediately next to me. Suddenly, half his head disappeared in body matter and what have you, splashed all over me and everyone else there. That was the brutality of the thing, and those are experiences that you never forget.
6,000 U.S. troops would die on the tiny Pacific Ocean island of Iwo Jima. 20,000 Japanese fell.
I think the thing that probably surprised me most is when we came into the beach, all of the equipment, the confusion, the dead bodies and things that were on the beach when we landed.
Despite 7 months of daily bombardments before the massive Marine landing, the Japanese were dug in and geared up for a grisly ground war.
You don't know how a wreck could live, really. But they're dug in and underground. You could lie down at night and hear them digging. They survived it. But how they did that, I think, is something that none of us who were there would ever be able to understand.
Their mission, one that was touted to last only a few days, went unabated for almost a month. And so as warriors of yesterday file through faded photographs to reflect and reminisce, they worry and anguish about their fresh-faced followers who lie in wait today.
If anybody said he wasn't afraid, then there was something wrong with him, because everybody is afraid. These kids are going to be afraid. But they'll do the job. I hate to see the first one go down, but of course that's war, and it's going to happen.
It's been said that uncommon valor was a common virtue during the fierce days of fighting on Iwo Jima.
We honestly believe that we were the toughest SOBs in town, and we were ready to prove it.
The sight of stars and stripes aflutter on that tiny island almost half a century ago is an image forever etched in the minds of millions. But lest we forget,
of course it was a joyous occasion, but then the next day and the next day we still had to fight 25 more days.
This is what ground war is all about. Pat Etheridge, CNN, Atlanta.
Our coverage of the war in the Gulf will continue in just a couple of minutes. Thank you. I'm Patrick Greenwald.
I'm Cheryl Atkinson. The news continues.
At Israel today, no damage reported. A full report on this station, Channel 9, tonight at 8.
I'm due for tea bucket. Sheriff for these...
To their peace plan, but that is not the case here in Washington, where this Soviet peace plan has landed with a thud. President Bush told Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, thanks, but no thanks.
And I've been frank with him on this, while expressing appreciation for his sending it to us. It falls well short of what would be required.
The proposal was designed by Gorbachev and presented to Iraq's foreign minister, Tariq Aziz, yesterday in Moscow. While all sides are keeping it confidential, there are reports that the plan calls for Iraq's unconditional withdrawal from Kuwait. In exchange, Saddam Hussein will not be punished, and eventually there will be talks about the Palestinian question.
Let me just reiterate, as far as I'm concerned, there are no negotiations. The goals have been set out. There will be no concessions.
And British allies were equally unimpressed.
But nothing has yet happened which would incline us to agree to a ceasefire or a pause in the conflict.
But in Moscow today, Soviet Foreign Minister Alexander Bismarck said it is Saddam Hussein's reaction that counts, and they're expecting that soon. Tariq Aziz arrived in Baghdad today with the plan, and then he's expected to make a U-turn and head back to Moscow with an answer. But the winds of Desert Storm could begin to blow Iraqi troops out of Kuwait any day now, as Allied troops are poised for a ground war. And lawmakers briefed at the White House today say this diplomatic dance will not slow it down.
I suspect, though, that what has happened is that Saddam Hussein has reached a point where he's thinking about withdrawing and is probably thinking about it just about a day too late.
I think he'd better start withdrawing them today. I think he'd better start moving them, because my feeling is this thing is, it's on the edge.
Some military analysts believe that the ground offensive was put off this weekend to give the Soviet maneuver a chance, and now it would appear that nothing stands in its way. For more on that, we go now to Steve Handelsman, who's standing by live in Saudi Arabia. Steve?
Wendy, here in the Gulf today, between the roar of the warplanes and the rumble of the tanks, you'd hardly know that diplomacy or its failure is the big news of the day. But we were reminded of that fact by the visit here today of a couple of U.S. senators who brought with them the politics of this war.
The 16-inch guns of the battleship Wisconsin blasted a birthday greeting to Virginia Senator John Warner, ranking Republican on the Armed Services Committee. Warner says the peace talks between Iraq and the Soviet Union are proof that U.S. forces here have been effective.
Look, the basic thing is Saddam Hussein is badly injured. He's been knocked down, but he's not out. And I think the nations of the world now, including the Soviet Union, they'll pick at his bones so that they can serve their own self-interest.
Also in the Gulf now is Armed Services Chairman, Democrat Stan Nunn of Georgia. Nunn says President Bush should not rush into a land war against Saddam.
And my overall hope has been and continues to be that we'll be able to line this one up from the air, because we're doing a darn good job from the air. We have tremendous advantages in the air. I know that if we get into a ground war, our ground forces are going to do well, but I'm hoping that that can be avoided.
But along the northern Saudi border, British heavy armored units are in position to join U.S. forces for a push into Iraq. British Challenger main battle tanks, high-tech British battlefield rockets, long-range, high accuracy. The British, too, hope a land war can be avoided, but like their U.S. allies, they know Saddam may not back down and that this may be their week to fight.
In the next 2 days, the skies will be favorable for an Allied attack. No rain and no moon. And the tides in the Persian Gulf would likewise favor a marine amphibious assault. All it will take is President Bush saying, go. This is Steve Handelsman reporting live from northeastern Saudi Arabia. Back to you.
All right, Steve, thanks very much for that. And despite its peace overtures, Iraq today continued its Scud war on Israel. Today's attack came an hour after the U.S. all but rejected this latest proposal to end the Gulf War. 2 Patriot missiles were reportedly fired to intercept the incoming Scud. Missile debris hit an area of central Israel that includes the West Bank. No immediate reports, though, of damage or injuries. We'll keep you posted. The Scud was not carrying chemical weapons, we are told. Most Israelis now believe that driving Iraqi forces out of Kuwait is simply not enough. They say there is no chance for peace if Saddam Hussein remains in power. John.
And Iraq is claiming its war casualties have been very heavy. An Iranian newspaper quotes Iraq's deputy premier as saying 20,000 Iraqis have been killed and more than 200,000 wounded in the first month of the fighting. That report does not say how many of the casualties are military personnel and how many are civilians. It does claim that Allied air attacks have caused more than $200 billion in damages to Iraq. Kelly?
News at home is next. Voter turnout is slow in that crucial supervisorial race in L.A. County's 1st district, and we'll have the latest on that for you next.
And mandatory water rationing will start in Los Angeles next month. We'll explain how it will work when we come back.
Did you ever touch someone's hands that felt so rough and dry you didn't want to touch them again?
At Hamadan Airfield near Tehran, they show 3 Soviet-built planes with the tail markings of the Iraqi Air Force. Experts identify the planes as Sukhoi 22s, NATO codename Fitter. Iraq is thought to have between 30 and 80 of these ground attack planes built in the 60s and no longer in service with the Soviet Air Force. The Iranians have said they won't release Iraq's planes until hostilities have ceased. But the pictures of the 3 Fitters clearly show that technically they could be made ready for combat almost immediately.
The Allied command in Saudi Arabia reports that more than 2,800 sorties were flown against Iraqi targets in these past 24 hours.
7 sailors were hurt yesterday when 2 American ships hit mines in the northern Persian Gulf area. Today, many local families are still waiting for word about their loved ones on board those ships. Channel 2's Jody Baskerville waited with one family in West Covina.
The Iraqi mine that tore a hole through the USS Tripoli didn't just rock the 2,000 Marines on board, it also managed to shake up their families here at home. Eric Porosky's parents were no exception.
I called today and they still don't know anything. They said they were going to notify the families first before they release the names of the ones that were hurt.
I just didn't feel that anything had happened to them. So that part was good.
Right.
But still, you're wondering. You don't know what's going down, whether all the guys are in the water or what, and you don't know what's taking place, and it's real hard on you.
Eric joined the Marines right out of high school. His mother keeps track of how long her son's been away by making patriotic pins and by counting the number of family celebrations he's missed. So far, the list includes 2 Christmases and 2 birthdays. Eric will celebrate his 21st next week on board the Tripoli.
We wanted to get back here so we can greet them and welcome them home.
Eric's younger brother is proud but worried. It's been more than 4 weeks since the family got a phone call, and the last letter they received was dated February 2nd. In it, Eric talked about preparing for the ground war.
It's scary not really knowing when he's going in or what, and in his letter he said he could either be going in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but he just knows that he's going in.
For now, all the Poroskys can do is continue to show their support and wait. The waiting is the hardest part. In West Covina, Jody Baskerville, Channel 2 Action News.
Still ahead on the special Gulf War edition of Action News, U.S. troops move into position for a ground war. We will have a report on the final preparations.
We will meet a recipient of a Purple Heart back home in Southern California after being wounded in battle.
And Dr. Howard Cortman continues his series on back pain. Today, some non-surgical methods of healing.
C&R announces more, better, faster, free.
Up to 30% of that was caused by Allied attacks. The Saudis initially said the slick had 11 million barrels.
Who would you choose? A president, a prime minister, a national hero?
And as we all saw in the movie Top Gun,
I got a good rock. Firing.
it usually comes out top dog in any dogfight. The key for the pilots is training.
The more time you have, the more experience you have, the more comfortable you are with the machine that's behind you, and the more comfortable you feel that you can exploit it to help yourself out if you get yourself into a tough spot.
This is a real F-14 fighter plane. But before a pilot ever climbs into the cockpit of one of these babies, he spends 10 or 15 hours in an exact duplicate cockpit, an indoor simulator. This is a simulator room at Oceana Naval Air Station in Virginia. The whir you hear in the background comes not from jet engines, but from computer fans and hydraulic pumps. Before a Navy pilot gets even this far, he's already mastered 3 other kinds of aircraft and has landed 2 of the 3 types on an aircraft carrier. By any standards, he's already an expert flyer. The simulator is an exact duplicate of an F-14 cockpit, the world's most sophisticated video game, where the controls and instruments all work and computers react just as a real plane would. But the stakes of this game are all too real, and the lessons learned here will save lives in the air.
This is one thing you probably don't have in your civilian airplane.
I have a private pilot's license, and I've been given a chance to fly the simulator to find out what it's like to try to land an F-14 on an aircraft carrier. My instructors are Grinch and Bob Dog, using their nicknames only, in case they someday wind up as Iraqi prisoners of war. Both men know they're going back to the Gulf soon, but they want to help us show you something of what an F-14 pilot goes through.
I see, okay. Right, making sure your twirling work with your rudders out.
I line up on a computerized catapult, and almost instantly, my F-14 is launched off the deck at about 160 miles an hour.
Ready to go? Yeah, right.
All clear, you look up there, you all clear, and he touches the deck.
So this starts moving right next to the
Around and 40 miles. You can trim it out as you're going. You gotta watch how high you're pulling your nose because it also decreases your air.
I was beginning to think this isn't so tough at all. A lot more instruments than a private plane, but at least the computer says I got it off the deck in one piece.
We got supersonic here, 500 yards, 0.9
Wow. Steve Abrams, Channel 4 News.
Some prestigious nominations announced today for this year's Writers Guild Awards. We'll have a rundown on that next.
Also, we're going to have some not-so-serious awards for irreverency coming up.
Coming up on the Channel 4 News at 4. The start of a ground war looks more likely as President Bush declares the Soviet peace plan unacceptable. You've heard the statistics. You know the risks. Now a step-by-step plan to help you kick the habit. A special series that could save your life. Freedom from smoking. And have you lost control of your life? Feeling depressed? Lonely? The secret to happiness may be closer than you think. A special report coming up at 4 on the Channel 4 News.
Now to update our top stories at this hour. Iraqi Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz is back home in Baghdad, delivering to Saddam Hussein the Soviet peace initiative he received in Moscow. The proposal got a chilly reception from President Bush, who says it falls far short of the terms necessary to end the war. Mr. Bush says he thanked Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev for the effort, but was frank with him about the plan's deficiencies. But the Soviet Foreign Minister, Alexander Bishmartnik, says acceptance of the plan is up to Iraq, not the United States. He says Aziz could return to Moscow as soon as tomorrow with the Iraqi response, and he says the initial response from the United States is not a setback. Both Washington and Moscow have refused to disclose details of the proposal. Meanwhile, Iraq lobbed at least one more Scud missile at Israel today. Israeli authorities say one Scud landed but caused no damage or injuries. An undetermined number of Patriot missiles were fired to intercept the Scud. And on Wall Street, a bit of mixed trading today. Let's get an update now from our business news desk of Jan Hopkins. Jan?
Thanks, Catherine. The stock market suffered a minor setback today as investors took profits after weeks of gains. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 2.5 points today in heavy trading. The index closing the day at a level of 29.32. Declining issues edged out advancing issues by an 8-7 margin. Both the broader and secondary markets moved higher. The S&P 500 and the American Stock Exchange Index each closing at a new record high. Some big gains for several stocks. Hewlett-Packard rose 5 1/4 on better than expected earnings reports. Other technology stocks like digital equipment and IBM also making strong gains on the day. Philip Morris added 2 7/8 on favorable analyst reports. And retailer Liz Claiborne rose 5 points on stronger fourth quarter earnings. The dollar gaining ground today against most major currencies, up more than a yen against the Japanese currency, up 1.5 pfennigs against the German mark, and up 1.5 cents against the British pound. Precious metals mixed in New York trading, gold unchanged, silver losing 9 cents. Oil prices continuing their descent today, trading in the New York Mercantile Exchange, a barrel of light sweet crude lost 81 cents, settling at a level of $20.07 a barrel. A gallon of gasoline now costs the same as it did when Iraq invaded Kuwait on August 2nd. The American Automobile Association reporting today that a gallon of unleaded self-serve gas now averages $1.13. If that seems like more than you paid last summer, you're right. State and federal taxes have added about 6 cents to every gallon of gasoline. That's the latest in business news. For a complete rundown of the day in business, watch Moneyline with Lou Dobbs, coming up in 1/2 hour. In New York, I'm Jan Hopkins.
Jan, thank you very much. As you know, there has been a lot of reaction from the coalition to the Gorbachev peace plan. Joining us now from New York to talk more about it is Egypt's ambassador to the United Nations, Amre Moussa. Mr. Ambassador, last week you were talking about Iraq's peace proposal. You called it encouraging. You called it a signal. What about the Soviet plan?
Well, I haven't gone through the details of the Soviet plan so far. But it seems that it is built on the acceptance by Iraq of all United Nations Security Council resolutions, meaning that the withdrawal should be unconditional and complete, and also to repeal the annexation, the decision to annex Kuwait, in addition to the implementation of all other resolutions. If this is the case, of course, this is the right beginning.
Well, as you know, President Bush said this morning that the new peace proposal falls well short of the UN mandate, and yet a lot of people throughout the day have been saying that Mr. Bush has not closed the door. Is that the reading you give it?
That is the reading in the United Nations, that it was not closing the door against this, for this initiative, but still we are waiting to hear the response of the Iraqi government.
Well, we've heard from Iranian's Foreign Minister Vedyati. We've heard from others throughout the day who feel very strongly that Iraq is ready to withdraw from Kuwait. You agree with that?
I heard those comments and they are encouraging. However, the question is not only the withdrawal from Kuwait, but it has to be undertaken within the framework of the Security Council resolutions. That means the acceptance has to be without strings attached, in addition to the implementation of all the resolutions of the Council. That is the withdrawal, the question of annexation of Kuwait, the question of compensation, and all other problems, or other points connected to it.
Mr. Ambassador, let's talk about if Saddam Hussein does pull out, and if Saddam goes back to Baghdad with his power. Will Egypt and the other members of the coalition be comfortable with that?
The question is not being comfortable or not, but if Saddam Hussein withdraws from Kuwait and abides by the will of international community, the resolutions as outlined in the Security Council resolutions, so it will be a beginning for him to understand that there are certain laws that have to be respected, and that the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence of all countries in the region have to be respected, and therefore we could deal with anybody based on the principles of the Charter of the United Nations and of the undertakings that no more threats and no more aggressions would be accepted.
Mr. Ambassador, given the history of the Iraqi government, do you think that Saddam Hussein will abide by rules?
Oh, let me say that we hope that he would, but anyway, the decision the final decision will be for the Iraqi people to assess the situation after what happened during the last 6 months, and the amount of the loss they have incurred, and the results of the aggression against Kuwait and its effects on the Arab people, on the future of the region, on the Palestinian question, on the security of the region, and so on.
There was talk recently about a post-war security structure. You just mentioned that in brief. How else do you think that would work?
In fact, the post-war plans have to deal first with the Palestinian question, also with the state of affairs in the region as a result of what happened during the last 6 months. But a solution for the Palestinian question has to be found. This is basic to the stability and the future development of the area.
And what about the way Israel would look at this kind of a security structure? Would it be worried?
I hope that Israel would cooperate with that, because without a solution for the Palestinian question, there will be a lot of troubles, and there will be a lot of things, a lot of problems to deal with, and we are looking forward to a future in the region that is based on peaceful relations and cooperation among countries of the region.
Ambassador Ahmed Musa of Egypt, thank you, sir, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with more of our coverage right after this.
Who would you choose?
The fact we are ready now if the leadership decides that that's what they want to do.
And Tom, virtually every source with whom I have spoken believes the leadership, the president, has already made the decision to attack and end it very quickly. Tom?
Thank you, Fred Francis at the Pentagon tonight. When Nightly News continues in a moment, Jane Pauley and The View from Baghdad via NBC's Tom Aspel.
So what are we hearing now?
Jane, the news is filtering through here that President Bush has poured cold water over any deal the Soviets may have been talking about with the Iraqis. It's just going to reinforce their conviction here that the U.S. is bent on destroying this country and taking out Saddam Hussein, not just going to war over Kuwait.
They're hitting old targets now, almost as if there's very little left in this city to bomb. Last night, heaviest raid since the war broke out. For 3 hours, the sky was filled with tracer and missile fire as the Iraqis tried to find the warplanes attacking Baghdad. The vivid flashes from the downtown area, followed a few seconds later by the boom of explosions, drove most of the city underground into shelters. There's been no word yet on casualties. According to the Iraqis, 1/3 of all attacks are now directed against civilian areas. That still leaves a lot of air power concentrated in the south, on the front lines around Kuwait. This morning, people were out looking for supplies. Kerosene is wildly expensive and difficult to find now. Baghdad is a city living by its wits. City hospitals, like those in the rest of the country, can only admit emergency cases now. Iraqi doctors say these children are undernourished, very probably dying. There's no electricity to run any of the hospital equipment anymore, and medicines have long since run out.
Iraqis are having difficulty understanding why every move they make towards the negotiating table is being turned down flat by the United States. They think they're making concessions, and they're genuinely puzzled by the lack of response from the U.S. and its allies. Jane?
Tom, have the people heard any news about what Saddam's reaction, what his response to the plan was?
Jane, originally the plan was for Baghdad Radio to carry an official government statement about the Moscow-Baghdad talks a couple of hours ago. That has not shown up, and we're now told that there could be an announcement tomorrow. I think the Iraqis are fully prepared to fight. They know there's an offensive coming, and I don't think now that they hold any hope out for any kind of settlement at this last moment.
All right, Tom Aspel in Baghdad. Thank you. American soldiers massed on the front are arriving in great numbers in this machine, the Bradley fighting vehicle. Almost 1,000 of them are making their debut in the desert. NBC Science correspondent Robert Bazell takes a look at the newest battlefield.